Welcome to the Medical Manners Podcast, where I give healthcare providers simple tips for ways they can transform the way they connect with their patients and colleagues. Connecting with patients isn't some secret sauce that some of us have and others don't. They're just skills, implemented consistently over time. If you want to transform your medical practice, you're in the right place. I'm Katie Wyatt, your host. I have been training healthcare providers on ways they can connect better with their patients and their colleagues for years now, and have been trying to think of different ways that I can get this important information out to more healthcare providers. And so thus, this podcast has been born. The point of this podcast is to help you as a healthcare provider know simple ways that you can connect with your patients and colleagues better. And the best way that I know how to explain what I hope this will do for you is to relate it to eating healthy. So we all know we should eat healthy, right? We've heard things like get good, high quality protein, don't eat simple carbs. We've heard these focus on veggies. We've heard these guidelines. We know the answers. If anyone asked us, we could splur off the answers to them, right? But then when push comes to shove and when we're at the grocery store and we're planning our meals, how many of us actually know what to buy, what to eat, what that actually looks like? So we know the what, we know what to do, we just don't know how to do it. And then we stumble upon someone who shows us exactly what to eat. They send us links to exactly what we should be eating. They give us ideas on what a meal actually looks like. And then everything changes. Suddenly we have the information we need to do what we always knew we should be doing, we just didn't know how. And so I hope that that's what this podcast is for you, because we all know the things we should be doing. We've been around long enough that we know we need to show empathy. We know we need to listen. We know we need to have shared decision-making with our patients, right? Yada, yada, yada. We know all of these things. We know the what, but a lot of providers don't know how. They don't know what that actually looks like in a patient exam room, in a visit. They know they're supposed to show empathy. What does that look like? What do you actually do in the room? And so I hope that that's what this podcast is for you. I've trained many healthcare providers, and I've learned that any healthcare provider can have great bedside manners, can get great patient satisfaction scores if they just learn the skills and they implement the skills consistently in patient visits. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here. The first episode today, we're going to talk about what I think is arguably the most important thing. And I would say either this topic, which is listening, or empathy are my top two. And there's tons of skills we'll talk about, but listening and empathy are just the top. They're the top for me. So we're going to start with listening today, and we'll do empathy in the next episode or two. So today we're going to talk about how you can actually listen better in your visits and what actions you need to take so that your patients perceive that you are listening. So I'm going to give you 3 different tools that you can use in your visits with your patients this week. The first skill that I want to talk about is being better at listening with your eyes. So we all listen with our ears, right? But listening with your eyes takes you to a whole different level. So much of listening actually takes place with our eyes. And how often do we go about our lives kind of listening to the people in our lives, but never really looking at them? And when we don't listen with our eyes, 2 things happen. We feel flustered because we feel like we are constantly listening, and the people that we're listening to feel flustered because they feel like we are never listening. And so my advice to you in your visits is to listen with your eyes and do so in batches. So batching is a really popular idea, right? In lots of areas of our life. Batch everything you have to do with a screwdriver and do it all at one time. Batch everything you need to do with a vacuum cleaner and do it at one time. But when we batch our listening, we are going to go into that exam room and we're going to sit down and we're going to scoot our chair or our stool towards the patient, and we're going to lean forward, and we are going to give them a couple minutes of our undivided listening attention. And it doesn't have to be long, like 2 to 3 minutes, total attention on the patient. We want this patient to undeniably know that we are 100% listening and focused on them. And I know you can't do this for the entire visit because there's going to be labs you need to look up, or there's going to be something in their chart you need to check, or you may need to be charting and working on notes while you are seeing the patient. And I understand all this. And that's why I say do it in batches. So go in, give your patients 2 to 3 minutes of your undivided listening attention. You're listening with your body, you're listening with your ears, you're listening with your eyes. And then go to your computer, do what you need to do. You're still listening with your ears, but you're on your computer doing what you need to do. And then again during the visit, turn to the patient and give them a couple more minutes of undivided listening. You will be amazed at what a big difference this makes. The goal here is that when the patient does their patient satisfaction survey, they can undeniably answer that yes, they were listened to because they know they were listened to. You made that very clear. So that's number 1, listen with your eyes and do this in batches. Tip number 2 is your goal is to listen to understand. And you want the patient to perceive that you listened and understood. And the way we do this is by asking follow-up questions. So a patient may kind of give you their history and you may ask something like, okay, I understand that you were sick for the last 2 weeks. Did you have a fever at all in those 2 weeks? So you're asking a question that clarifies the situation. You don't have all the information you need. You're going to ask those follow-up questions so the patient understands they're listening. They need to know more. They're really understanding this. And then another tool you can use is you can repeat back to the patient in a succinct manner what they said to you. So you can say something like, okay, I understand that you got bit by a dog a couple days ago. Since then, your hand has been swelling. You've noticed some pus, but no fever. Am I getting that right? And you say something like that to the patient and they say, yeah, that's right. Or they'll say no and they'll correct you. But either way, by asking these clarifying questions or repeating back in summary what the patient said to you, you are letting the patient know that not only did you hear, but you understood. Okay, that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is, I think, one of the most important skills you can have as a provider because it's so necessary. So tip number 3 is learning how to redirect patients when they get off track. So when you're listening to them and they get off track, how do we bring it back? Because we know that if we let our patients have free reign of the time and the conversation, there are certain patients that we would never get anywhere with. Not only would it not be fair to the other patients that are waiting to be seen next, but it wouldn't be fair to the patient you're seeing because you would never get the information you needed. And you would never be able to help them come to a conclusion or a solution because they're rambling off. So when you come to those situations, your patient's going to be, kind of talking and getting way off base and going down their rabbit holes about something or another that doesn't matter. And you are going to use what I call the let me interrupt you to make sure I understand method. So, dear sweet old Martha's going down a rabbit hole about something, and you're going to say to her, Martha, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute to make sure I understand right. Okay, so we're interrupting Martha. We can't listen anymore. We have to interrupt her at this point. We've already listened to her for a little bit. We've given her a chance, but she's not going anywhere with it. So we say, Martha, I am going to interrupt you to make sure I understand right. Okay, now Martha might have been offended that we interrupted her, but because we're interrupting her to make sure we understand, Martha's like, wow, they really want to understand me. Okay, so we've appeased Martha, even though we've interrupted. She's feeling okay about things. And so at that point, then you give a quick little summary of what she's told you. Okay, Martha, I'm going to interrupt you to make sure I understand right. You got bit by a dog 3 days ago. Your hand has been swollen and you've noticed some pus. Have you had a fever? Okay, so after you say that the phrase where you say you're going to interrupt her to make sure you understand. Then you're going to give a quick summary of what she said. And then very quickly, before Martha interrupts again, you're going to ask a question that re-guides Martha in the direction you need her to go. Then she's going to answer your question, and more likely than not, she's going to go down another rabbit hole and just keep talking. And so you're going to give her a minute. You're going to make sure that, she doesn't come around. But if she doesn't come around again and she's going off the deep end again, you just do the exact same thing again. Okay, Martha, let me interrupt you one more time just to make sure I have it right. You give a quick summary, then you ask another guiding question. And with some patients, I do this 3 or 4 times in the visit. And it can be annoying, but we typically can always get to where I feel like I have the information that I need to help Martha, and to where Martha feels confident that I care and I want to understand and I want to do what's best for her. So that's my tip number 3. Implement the I'm going to interrupt you to make sure I understand right method. That one will change your life, folks, if you use that one. Okay, just to summarize, this week as we focus on being a better listener with our patient, we are going to 1, listen with our eyes and do so in batches. 2, listen to show understanding. And 3, listen and learn how to redirect patients that you are listening to. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're a patient and have a great story about a time that a healthcare provider gave you awesome care, or you're a healthcare provider who has a story about a colleague or yourself who gave incredible care, I want to hear about it. Reach out to me at Medical Manners on Instagram, or send an email to Katie, Katie, at medicalmanners.com. Together, we can transform the way we deliver healthcare by transforming the way we connect. Take care.